In 1919, the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. The devastation of World War I was finally over, and the diplomats packing up their papers in Europe genuinely believed they had fought the war to end all wars. But the agreement they signed, the Treaty of Versailles, contained a specific provision known as Article 231, the War Guilt Clause. It forced Germany to accept absolute, total responsibility for the entire conflict, regardless of who else had participated. That admission of guilt came with a staggering financial penalty. Germany was ordered to pay a fine of $33 billion to the victorious Allied nations, roughly $270 billion in today's money. Look closely at this piece of German emergency currency from 1923. The denomination printed on it is 200 billion marks. To pay its impossible debts, the German government rapidly printed money, causing hyperinflation so severe that a single loaf of bread cost billions. Stripping a recovering nation of its wealth and its enmity did not guarantee peace. It hollowed out the German economy, creating a massive vacuum of national desperation. That desperation compounded in 1929 when the Great Depression hit. By 1933, the German economy was entirely crippled, leaving 6 million people unemployed and families starving in the streets. Into this environment of extreme vulnerability stepped a young political opportunist, Adolf Hitler. He possessed a unique talent for weaponizing public anger and turning humiliation into a political movement. Hitler gave the suffering masses a target. He loudly pushed a conspiracy theory that Jewish citizens and socialists were the real reason Germany lost World War I, scapegoating minority populations for the country's economic ruin. After a decade of heavily funded propaganda, orchestrated hate speech, and violent political intimidation, Hitler completely dismantled the existing government. In 1933, he declared himself the absolute dictator of Germany. When citizens are starving and stripped of their pride, democratic institutions erode easily. People will hand over total control to a fringe figure if he promises a return to national superiority. Hitler immediately began tearing up the rules of the Versailles Treaty. In 1935, the world learned that Germany had secretly rebuilt its military and possessed a massive new air force, the Luftwaffe. Britain had the legal right to intervene, but many British politicians felt guilty about the severe terms imposed in 1919. Instead of stopping him, they actually signed a naval agreement that formally permitted Germany to rebuild its fleet. Unchecked, Hitler pursued Lebensraum, living space for his envisioned Aryan Empire. By planting pro-Nazi operatives and spreading fake news about violent riots, he annexed neighboring Austria without firing a single shot. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain was desperate to avoid another global conflict. He pursued a strict policy of appeasement, agreeing to hand over parts of Czechoslovakia as long as Hitler promised his territorial expansion was over. Chamberlain returned home waving the Munich Agreement, declaring peace for their time. Less than a year later, German troops marched right through the agreement and conquered the rest of Czechoslovakia. Appeasement assumes both sides respect the law, but when an aggressor views treaties merely as temporary delays used to position troops, diplomacy guarantees a future conflict. Hitler set his sights on Poland next. To avoid fighting a war on two fronts, he executed a massive tactical deception, signing a non-aggression pact with his sworn ideological enemy, the Soviet Union. On September 1, 1939, nearly 1 million German troops pushed into Poland. The United Kingdom and France finally reached their breaking point and officially declared war on Germany. The defending armies prepared for the slow, brutal trench warfare of the past. But Hitler unleashed a terrifying new military doctrine, Blitzkrieg, lightning war. It relied entirely on overwhelming speed and stealth. Fast-moving armored tanks shattered defensive lines on the ground, while the Luftwaffe rained continuous destruction from the sky. The impossible speed of this advance had a chemical engine. German soldiers were routinely supplied with Pervitin, a drug we know today as crystal meth. It eliminated fatigue, allowing entire divisions to fight relentlessly for days without sleeping. Combining diplomatic subversion with a drug-fueled mechanized infantry completely shattered the established rules of combat. The world had no defense prepared for an army that never stopped moving. Following a brief lull known as the Phony War, Hitler pivoted his massive, stimulated army west. In May 1940, he launched an all-out assault on France and the Low Countries. France's survival hinged entirely on the Maginot Line, a highly rigid 450-kilometer wall of concrete bunkers and artillery batteries built along the German border. Germany staged massive decoy attacks straight into the Netherlands and the Maginot Line, drawing Allied forces out of position. Then came the trap. Hitler funneled 40,000 military vehicles through the supposedly impassable Ardennes forest, completely flanking the Allies from behind. A static, predictable defense creates a fatal vulnerability. When you build an unbreachable wall, you assume the enemy won't just walk around it through terrain you deemed impassable. The maneuver worked perfectly. Almost instantly, 400,000 Allied troops were stranded on the beaches of Dunkirk, pinned between the advancing German army and the ocean. They were saved by Operation Dynamo, a massive evacuation utilizing private fishing boats and civilian sailors. The men survived, but the Allies had to abandon nearly all of their heavy military equipment on the sand. Within weeks, the French government formally surrendered. Watching the geopolitical map collapse, Benito Mussolini eagerly pulled Italy into the war as an Axis power. With the United States firmly refusing to enter a European conflict, newly appointed British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was left to look across the Channel at a continent entirely consumed by Hitler's empire. The impossible financial punishments levied in 1919 methodically birthed an unstoppable military machine. By 1940, a single island nation was the only obstacle left standing between that machine and total victory.